Hello, hello. Hope everyone is doing well. Hopefully, you're not sick of reading yet, but I mean, the big part of this class is reading. So we just read Bang, and now we'll get into only half, though. The article a little bit long, so we'll break it up into two different parts. But we are going to today talk about the Armenian genocide that started in 1915. Now, based on what we've discussed in class already, based on the video that we watched about Armenia in general, some of this article hopefully will sound familiar to you, which is the idea. So you get the information in a couple different ways, and over time, some of these things that were difficult at first just become more ingrained in your knowledge. So that's the idea. So we're going to read this together, discuss. Anytime you have anything you want to say, anything you remember from the video or what you've learned in the past, please let me know. I'll stop the video. So we're talking about the Ottoman Empire, something that hasn't been in this world for like 100 years, but it had been in the world for like 1,000 years before. So it was an established, almost, I don't know, maybe like the United States. The United States has only been around for like a little over 200 years, right? 250 maybe. So this was when this genocide started. The writing was already on the wall. The Ottoman Empire was losing money, was losing territory, was losing a war. So it's that very common story of genocide is like, okay, our life is getting worse. Who do we blame? And the Ottoman Empire largely was a Muslim empire, and there was a smaller population of Christians. So that was kind of the natural progression. We just learned in the Balkans, we learned about a kind of a Christian empire or Christian country that had a small population of Muslims. We're like, maybe we should blame them. When we talk about the Holocaust in a couple weeks, there's like largely a Christian empire, I guess we could say, the German Empire. It wasn't just Germany, though. Remember, we'll talk about Latvia. We'll talk about other countries that were involved, largely Christian. Let's see who's different. Well, people who are Jewish are different. So, as we talked about in some classes, religion is often, not always, but often a key when it comes to genocide. If you remember back to Rwanda, it wasn't really religion. That was more race. And if we talk about Cambodia, if we have enough time to talk about Cambodia, that won't be as much about race or religion. It'll be more about politics. Or we'll get to that. But let's talk about the Ottoman Empire here in the Armenian genocide. Here we have a picture, but no caption. So we just kind of have to guess as to what this might be. I don't know. I don't want to guess too much, but these could be Armenian people. And if you look at men, women, children are in this picture. And what we know about genocide, I mean, it's pretty indiscriminate. It doesn't really follow a pattern of like, oh, men, all men, or women and children. Usually in a genocide, the goal is to get rid of everybody. There will be a small section, I don't think we read it today, but later on about what was done to orphans. I mean, orphans in itself, it's a horrible thing, right? They've lost their parents, but there was an attempt to try to adopt some of them and not kill them. But unfortunately, the parents were killed. All right, let's start here. Well, I mean, you can rewatch this and pause it if you want to go into more detail about this, but this is written at 8th grade level. So recommended for high school. You guys are almost there. We got step up day in just a couple weeks. But let's read this first paragraph here, full of some pretty difficult vocabulary, but luckily some of this should be old stuff, like stuff that you've heard in the past, hopefully from that video we talked about, or the words that we have for study guide 12. In 1915, leaders of the Turkish government set in motion a plan to expel and massacre Armenians living in the Ottoman Empire. Now, that's later Turkey. That's important. I'm not sure if I've talked about this enough, but when we talk about modern day Turkey, excuse me, that is part of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire was very large. I tried looking for a good map of the Ottoman Empire in 1914, right before it crumbled, and I couldn't really find it. But if you look at like Turkey, Armenia, parts of Armenia were in it, but like even down to like Egypt and Syria, if you can picture that in your mind, like there were some big countries that were absorbed into the Ottoman Empire over the years, and it had been like a few centuries and they were losing bits and bits of territory. All right, back to this. At the time, there were about 2 million Armenians in the Ottoman Empire. By the early 1920s, when the massacres and deportations finally ended, some 1.5 million of Turkey's Armenians were dead. So you do a little math, there's only about 500,000 left. And as we saw in those videos, probably if they weren't killed, they scattered. They moved to places like Russia. They moved to places like the United States. All right. With many others forcibly removed from the country. Today, most historians call this event a genocide. And again, we have a definition here of what a genocide is: a planned and systematic campaign to wipe out an entire people. Systematic is one of our old words. However, the Turkish government does not acknowledge that a genocide took place. Today, it is still illegal in Turkey to talk about what happened to Armenians during this era. So if a government, first of all, if a government has the power to make speech illegal, be careful. We don't have that in this country. Hopefully that's totally foreign, but you can see that in places like Russia. You know, you can't call what's going on in Ukraine a war. It's a special operation. If you call it a war, no joke, you could be put in jail for up to 15 years. Like, that's a thing. So even in Turkey, their president right now, some call him a dictator, Erdogan. I'm not sure if you've heard of him, but when President Trump and Erdogan got a little close, some in the media were like, oh yeah, that's President Trump loving dictators when he was, had talks with Putin. Same thing. So Putin in Russia, Erdogan in Turkey, kind of dictators. And also in Turkey right now, inflation. We have a problem with inflation. You can see it in gas prices and stuff like that. In Turkey, it's even crazier, way worse with economics. So that's modern day Turkey. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about modern day Turkey for this genocide. I'm not sure if it's necessary, but it is illegal in the country of Turkey to talk about the genocide. And in fact, in Moon Knight, I just finished episode 5 yesterday. Not sure if anybody else did, but in the first episode of Moon Knight, we actually watched it in class. Ethan Hawke's character, Dr. Is it Harrow? He said that Moon Knight, or the god that he serves, Khonshu, was responsible for the Armenian genocide. And then apparently a lot of people living in Turkey were like, what? That's not a genocide. We'll talk at the end of the article tomorrow. We'll talk about how Turkey kind of gets around not calling it a genocide, but, other things that happen there. All right. We didn't read quite half of the article. We just got into it. So this might be a 3-parter, but I feel like, we've talked enough about that today, I think. So why don't we call that a day? Rest of the time in class, you can work on whatever you need to work on for this class, or maybe Mr. Bim's scripts. I know a couple people, we've looked those over. Let me know if you want me to look that over. We'll get the all the I's dotted and the T's crossed, or whatever that stuff is. Yeah, let me know. I'll be around.